It all started innocently enough, or at least, that's how it seemed at first. Megan and I had been married for 7 years, and I thought we had a good thing going. We lived in a spacious two-story house in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind of place where everyone knew your name. It was the dream, really. And then there was Ryan. Ryan and I had been best friends since college. He wasn't just a buddy. He was practically family. We'd been through thick and thin together. Wild frat parties, cross-country road trips, even that one disastrous ski trip where he broke his arm trying to impress a girl. If I ever had a brother, it would have been Ryan. Naturally, he became a big part of my life, and eventually, Megan's too. She adored him, or at least that's what I thought back then. Everything shifted a few months before my birthday. Megan and Ryan started spending a lot of time together. She told me they were working on some special project for my big day. At first, I felt flattered. It seemed sweet, my wife and best friend teaming up to plan something memorable for me. But as the days turned into weeks, their secrecy began to gnaw at me. One evening, I came home from work to find them huddled in the living room, whispering over Megan's laptop. As soon as I walked in, they snapped it shut. Megan gave me a too bright smile. "Hey babe, how was work?" she chirped. "Fine," I said, eyeing them both. "What's going on?" "Nothing," Ryan said, too quickly. "Just, planning stuff." They exchanged a glance, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. But I brushed it aside. Maybe I was just being paranoid. After all, they were working on a surprise for me, right? The first real crack in the facade appeared a week later. Megan had gone out shopping with Ryan for the day, claiming they needed supplies for the project. When she got home, I asked casually, "So, what did you guys get?" She froze for a split second, then recovered with a laugh. "Oh, just some decorations and stuff. Don't worry, you'll love it." But later that night, as she showered, I peeked into her shopping bags. They were empty. Not a single decoration in sight. That was strike one. Strike two came a few days later. I woke up in the middle of the night to find her missing from our bed. I padded downstairs, and there she was, sitting on the couch with her phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was low, hushed. "I can't talk now," she whispered. "He'll hear me." I stepped into the room, and she jumped like she'd seen a ghost. "Who are you talking to?" I asked. "No one," she said, shoving the phone behind her back. "Just checking on my mom. She hasn't been feeling well." Her mom lived 3 states away, and Megan rarely called her, let alone at 2 in the morning. But I let it slide, even as suspicion started to fester. The final straw came when I walked in on her texting. She didn't notice me at first, too engrossed in whatever was on her screen. I saw her type, "I can't wait to see you again. Today was amazing." Before I could catch more, she looked up and hastily shoved her phone into her pocket. "What was that about?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "Work stuff," she said breezily. "Just coordinating schedules for a meeting." I didn't buy it. Her smile was too forced, her eyes too shifty. And why would she text Ryan about work? He wasn't even in her industry. By now, the doubts were impossible to ignore. The late-night calls, the cryptic texts, the way she seemed to light up whenever Ryan was around. It all pointed to something I didn't want to admit. But if there was one thing I knew for sure, it was that I needed to find out the truth. For now, I played along, pretending to believe her stories. I smiled when she and Ryan exchanged knowing looks. I nodded when she assured me everything was fine. But inside, I was already planning my next move. They thought they were clever, but they had no idea who they were messing with. Suspicion had taken root, and it wasn't going away. Every time Megan smiled at me, every time Ryan dropped by unannounced, it felt like a jab, a mockery of the life I thought we had. But instead of confronting them outright, I decided to dig deeper. If they were hiding something, I'd find it. It started with Megan's phone. She'd become extra cautious with it lately, keeping it glued to her side or stashing it in her purse. But one evening, she slipped up. While she was in the shower, she left it charging on the nightstand. My heart was pounding as I picked it up. I hated snooping, but I needed answers. I unlocked the phone. She'd never bothered to change the password. My stomach churned as I opened her messages. Most of them were harmless. Text with friends, work emails, But then I found a thread with Ryan. It was as bad as I feared. Ryan, today was amazing. Can't wait for the next time. Megan, me too. It's so hard pretending around him, though. Feels wrong, but also so right. Ryan, don't worry. We'll figure it out. Just focus on the project for now. My grip tightened on the phone. The project, the one they'd been so eager to keep secret, wasn't for me. It was for them. My world tilted, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. I put the phone back just as she turned off the shower. I stepped out of the room before she caught me, my mind racing. If I confronted her now, she'd just deny it. No, I needed more than texts. I needed proof. The next day, I followed her. She told me she was meeting Ryan to finalize some plans for my birthday. I nodded, playing along, then waited 10 minutes before getting in my car. I kept a safe distance as I tailed her to a little cafe on the other side of town. It wasn't the kind of place we ever went to, too secluded, too intimate. Through the window, I saw them sitting together in a corner booth. They were close, too close. Megan was laughing at something Ryan said, her hand brushing his arm. He leaned in, whispering something in her ear that made her blush. My fists clenched on the steering wheel. But the final blow came when Ryan reached into his bag and pulled out a travel brochure. He spread it out on the table, pointing at something. Megan nodded eagerly, her eyes lighting up. When they left, I waited until the coast was clear, then walked into the cafe. Their booth was empty, but the travel brochure was still there, tucked under the salt shaker. I picked it up, my heart sinking as I read the destination. A luxury resort in the Caribbean. The dates matched the week Megan had told me she'd be busy with work. By the time I got home, I'd made up my mind. Confronting them now would only give them the chance to lie their way out of it. No, I needed to wait, to gather undeniable evidence that would expose their betrayal for what it was. That night, I ordered a few things online. A couple of hidden cameras, a recording device, and a GPS tracker. If they were going to stab me in the back, I'd make sure they didn't see the knife coming. I also started acting differently, more attentive, more supportive. When Megan told me she was going out with Ryan, I smiled and said, "Have fun." When Ryan came over, I offered him a beer and acted like nothing was wrong. Inside, though, I was boiling. They thought they were being clever, but I was always one step ahead. They wouldn't see it coming when their little house of cards came crashing down. I'd always thought of myself as a patient man, but patience has its limits, and mine was running thin. Megan and Ryan were tiptoeing around, thinking they had me fooled. Little did they know, I was setting the stage for their downfall. The first thing I did was install the hidden cameras. Late one night, while Megan was asleep, I set up one in the living room and another in the kitchen, two spots they often gravitated toward during their planning sessions. I also slipped a GPS tracker into Megan's car and attached a voice recorder to the underside of our dining table. By the time I was done, the house felt like a surveillance headquarters. It wasn't exactly a proud moment, but pride wasn't what I was after. I needed the truth, no matter how ugly it was. It didn't take long for the cameras to start delivering results. On the first day, while I was at work, Megan invited Ryan over. They were cautious at first, sitting on opposite ends of the couch. But as the hours passed, their restraint crumbled. I watched the footage later that night, my stomach churning. Megan leaned in close to Ryan, her hand resting on his knee. They whispered to each other, laughing like teenagers sneaking around behind their parents' backs. Then Ryan pulled her into a kiss, deep, slow, and far too intimate for just friends. I paused the footage, while rising in my throat. This wasn't just a flirtation. It was a full-blown affair. Over the next few days, I pieced together their plans. The voice recorder captured snippets of their conversations. Talk about the Caribbean resort, about how they couldn't wait to finally be alone together. Megan even joked about how clueless I was. "I feel bad sometimes," she said in a hushed tone, "but he's so oblivious. It's almost funny." Ryan laughed. "Don't worry about him. He's too busy with work to notice anything." I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. The arrogance, the audacity. They thought I was some kind of fool, but they had no idea what was coming. I kept up my act, pretending to be the doting husband. I encouraged Megan to spend time with Ryan, even suggested she take a day off work to relax. She was thrilled, completely unaware that I was using her own complacency against her. At the same time, I started documenting everything. I saved copies of the text messages, uploaded the video footage to a secure cloud account, and transcribed their recorded conversations. Every piece of evidence was a nail in their coffin, and I intended to use them all. One evening, Ryan stopped by unexpectedly. Megan wasn't home, so it was just the two of us. He seemed nervous, fidgeting with his beer bottle as we sat on the back porch. "You've been spending a lot of time with Megan lately," I said casually, taking a sip of my drink. Ryan froze for a moment, then forced a laugh. "Yeah, just working on the surprise." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "Must be some surprise. You two are really putting in the hours." He looked away, his face twitching with guilt. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But this was the same guy who'd been sneaking around with my wife, so my sympathy was limited. "Well," I said, clapping him on the shoulder, "I'm sure it'll all be worth it. I can't wait to see what you've come up with." By the end of the week, I had everything I needed. The cameras, the recorder, the tracker, they'd all done their job. I had more than enough evidence to blow their little secret wide open. But I wasn't ready to pull the trigger just yet. Timing was everything, and I wanted my revenge to be perfect. I started planning a birthday party, something big, with all our friends and family. Megan was thrilled by the idea, and even Ryan seemed eager to help. Neither of them suspected that the party wasn't just a celebration. It was the trap I'd been laying all along. The day of the party arrived, and the house was buzzing with activity. Megan had gone all out with decorations, balloons, and catering. Ryan was there too, helping with last-minute preparations. To anyone watching, it might have seemed like a picture-perfect celebration of friendship and love. But beneath the surface, I was a coiled spring, ready to snap. By evening, the house was packed with our closest friends and family. Laughter and conversation filled the air as people mingled, sipping drinks and complimenting Megan on the setup. She soaked in the praise, beaming as if she were the perfect wife. Ryan hovered nearby, his usual cocky grin plastered across his face. I played my part flawlessly, greeting guests with a warm smile and thanking everyone for coming. Inside, my heart was pounding. Everything was in place. The cameras were rolling, and the incriminating footage was ready to play. All I had to do was wait for the right moment. After dinner, Megan insisted I give a speech. She stood by my side, her hand resting lightly on my arm, as I clinked my glass to get everyone's attention. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to me. "First off," I began, my voice steady, "I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. It means the world to me to have so many amazing people in my life." There were murmurs of agreement, smiles all around. I caught Ryan's eye and saw a flicker of unease. "Good. And of course," I continued, turning to Megan, "I want to thank my beautiful wife for putting all of this together. Megan, you've outdone yourself. I'm so lucky to have you." She blushed, leaning in to kiss my cheek. The crowd clapped, a few people whistling. "But," I said, my tone shifting slightly, "there's another reason I wanted to gather everyone here tonight." The room grew quieter. Megan tilted her head, a hint of confusion flickering across her face. Ryan shifted uncomfortably, glancing around as if looking for an escape route. "You see," I said, setting my glass down, "I've learned a lot over the past few months. About trust, about loyalty, about betrayal." Megan's smile faltered. Ryan froze, his beer halfway to his lips. "I've been working on a little project of my own," I continued. "And tonight, I thought I'd share it with all of you." With that, I grabbed the remote and hit play. The TV screen behind me lit up, and the room fell deathly silent as the footage began to roll. First came the texts, displayed in bold letters for everyone to read. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the messages scrolled by, each one more damning than the last. Then came the video clips, Megan and Ryan on the couch, their stolen kisses, their whispered confessions. Megan's face turned ghostly pale. "Ethan," she stammered, "what is this? How could you?" I held up a hand, cutting her off. "Save it. The evidence speaks for itself." Ryan stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Man, this is a misunderstanding. We can." "Sit down," I barked, my voice sharp enough to cut through steel. He sank back into his seat, his face flushed with shame. The room erupted into chaos. Friends and family stared at Megan and Ryan with a mix of disbelief and disgust. Some muttered under their breath. Others shook their heads in anger. Megan tried to salvage the situation, tears streaming down her face. "Please, you have to understand." "Understand what?" I snapped. "That you've been lying to me? Sneaking around with my best friend?" "No, Megan. There's nothing to understand." Ryan muttered something under his breath, but I wasn't done. "And you," I said, turning to him, "you were like a brother to me. I trusted you. And this is how you repay me?" He opened his mouth to respond, but I didn't give him the chance. "Get out. Both of you." By the time the dust settled, Megan and Ryan had slinked away, their reputations in shambles. The party ended abruptly, but not before I received countless words of support from our friends and family. "I can't believe they did this to you," one guest said, shaking their head. "You're better off without them," another added. As the last guest left, I sat alone in the living room, surrounded by the remnants of the party. It wasn't the birthday I'd imagined, but it was a night I'd never forget. The house was eerily quiet the morning after the party. The decorations were still up, the half-empty glasses and crumpled napkins scattered across the living room like remnants of a battlefield. But the war was over, or at least the first battle. Now, it was time to finish what I'd started. I wasted no time. By Monday morning, I was sitting in my lawyer's office, laying out the details of what had transpired. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Karen, listened intently as I explained the situation. "You've got a strong case," she said, flipping through the evidence I'd provided. "With this much documentation, we can ensure Megan walks away with as little as possible." That was all I needed to hear. Within days, the divorce papers were drawn up. I served Megan at her workplace, ensuring maximum humiliation. She showed up at the house that evening, banging on the door and yelling for me to let her in. "Ethan, please," she cried. "We need to talk about this." I opened the door just enough to hand her a box with her things. "We've got nothing to talk about, Megan. It's over." Her face crumpled, but I didn't stick around to watch. I closed the door and locked it, leaving her standing on the porch. Ryan didn't get off easy either. I filed a lawsuit against him for emotional distress and interference in my marriage. While the case wasn't guaranteed to win, the mere act of filing it sent a message. You don't betray someone like that without consequences. Word spread quickly through our social circle. Ryan's once pristine reputation was in tatters. He lost his job shortly after, and I heard through the grapevine that his girlfriend, someone I didn't even know about, had dumped him after finding out about the affair. For the first few weeks, the house felt like a hollow shell. Megan's presence lingered in every room, a haunting reminder of the life I thought we had. But slowly, I began to reclaim my space. I redecorated, painted over the walls she'd chosen, and tossed out anything that reminded me of her. My friends and family rallied around me, offering support and encouragement. They were as shocked as I was by Megan and Ryan's betrayal, but they made it clear where their loyalties lay. "You're better off without them," my sister said over dinner one night. "They don't deserve to be in your life." She was right. As painful as it was, cutting them out was the only way forward. Months passed, and life started to feel normal again. The divorce was finalized, and Megan moved to a different city, leaving me to pick up the pieces. I found solace in my work, throwing myself into projects that kept me busy and distracted. One evening, I was having drinks with a group of friends when one of them leaned over and said, "You're looking good, Ethan. Like, really good. It's like a weight's been lifted." I laughed, but they weren't wrong. The betrayal had hurt. It had gutted me, but it hadn't broken me. If anything, it had made me stronger. I'd learned the hard way that trust is a fragile thing, and I vowed to be more careful with it in the future. A few weeks after the divorce was finalized, I received a call from a mutual friend. "You're not going to believe this," they said. "Megan and Ryan broke up." Apparently, their relationship couldn't withstand the fallout from the affair. They turned on each other, blaming one another for their ruined lives. It was poetic justice, and I couldn't help but smile as I hung up the phone. Standing on my back porch one evening, a glass of bourbon in hand, I felt a strange sense of peace. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the yard. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. The betrayal had left scars, but they were just that, scars. A reminder of what I'd endured and survived. I wasn't the same man I'd been before, but maybe that wasn't a bad thing. I was tougher, wiser, and ready to move on. As I took a sip of my drink, I couldn't help but think, the best revenge isn't just living well, it's living better. Months after the dust settled, I found myself stepping into a version of life I hadn't imagined. One where Megan and Ryan were ghosts of the past, and I had the freedom to rebuild from scratch. It wasn't easy. Healing after betrayal isn't a straight line. It's a jagged, messy climb. But somewhere along the way, I started finding my footing. It happened at a local coffee shop, the kind of place I'd avoided for a while because it was Megan's favorite. I was standing in line, scrolling through my phone, when a voice behind me said, "Long line today, huh?" I turned around and saw her. She had auburn hair that caught the sunlight streaming through the window and a warm, easy smile that felt like a balm to my raw edges. "Yeah," I said, fumbling for words. "Must be the pumpkin spice season or something." She laughed, a genuine, melodic sound, and held out her hand. "I'm Claire." "Ethan," I replied, shaking her hand. Her grip was firm, confident, and something about her felt different. Not forced or fake, but real in a way I hadn't realized I'd been missing. We ended up sharing a table, chatting over coffee like old friends. She told me about her job as a graphic designer and how she'd just moved to the area after a tough breakup. I shared a bit about my own story. Not the betrayal, just the fact that I was recently divorced and starting fresh. "Sounds like we're both in the rebuilding phase," she said, raising her cup in a mock toast. "Here's to rebuilding," I said, clinking my cup against hers. It wasn't love at first sight, not the dramatic kind, anyway. But there was something there, a connection that felt natural and unforced. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. Claire and I started seeing each other casually, coffee here, a hike there. She wasn't like Megan. There were no games, no hidden agendas. When she said something, she meant it, and when she asked questions, she genuinely wanted to know the answers. But even with all her honesty and warmth, I couldn't shake the ghosts of my past. There were moments when I caught myself second-guessing her, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Once, she caught me hesitating and said, "You've been burned, haven't you?" I nodded, unsure how much to reveal. "I get it," she said softly, "but not everyone's like that. Some of us just want to be happy and make someone else happy too." Her words stuck with me. Maybe she was right. Maybe not everyone was like Megan. One night, after a dinner date, we ended up at my place. I hesitated before opening the door, the memories of Megan's lies and betrayals still lurking in the corners. But Claire stepped inside without hesitation, looking around with curiosity. "Nice place," she said, running her fingers along the bookshelves. "Feels like you." I smiled for the first time in a while. "Thanks." It didn't for a long time, but I guess I'm making it mine again. She turned to me, her eyes steady. "That's what matters, Ethan. Moving forward. Leaving the past where it belongs." Her words felt like a challenge, and for once, I was ready to accept it. Over the weeks that followed, Claire became a bigger part of my life. She didn't push or pry, just quietly supported me as I worked through my scars. With her, there were no mind games or half-truths. It was real, simple, honest, and exactly what I needed. I started to see myself in a new light, too. The anger and bitterness that had consumed me began to fade, replaced by something softer, more hopeful. For the first time in years, I felt like I was building something good, not just with Claire, but within myself. One evening, as we sat on the back porch watching the sunset, Claire turned to me and asked, "Do you ever think about her, Megan?" I thought for a moment, then shook my head. "Not like I used to. I think I've finally let it go." Claire nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Good. You deserve better." "Thanks to you," I said, taking her hand. "No," she replied. "Thanks to you. You chose to heal. I just showed up along the way." With Claire by my side, life started to feel possible again. The betrayal and pain were still a part of my story, but they no longer defined me. I was more than Megan's ex-husband, more than Ryan's betrayed friend. I was Ethan, a man who had weathered the storm and come out stronger on the other side. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to see where the road would take me next. Subscribe so you don't miss new stories on the channel.